Greetings, fellow travelers. Mr. French here. So today, for Sunday prepper dinner, we are going to take some fresh ingredients and combine them with our long-term food and see what we can come up with. We have home-style potato soup, and we're not actually going to make soup, but we're going to use some of that to make a salmon croquette, because I had salmon for dinner last night and I have leftovers right here, so we're going to use those. We have some mac and cheese. I know people say don't combine fish with cheese, but I don't care. The mac and cheese is delicious. We have some white rice today and freeze-dried green beans, which I think are just excellent. I would eat those anytime at all. They're really, really good. So let me get set up here and we will get cooking. Okay, so the first thing we're going to want to do for our salmon croquette is get our home-style potato soup prepared. Like I said, we're not making soup. We're making glue for the salmon croquette. If you can see down in there, and you can, these chunks are going to rehydrate into potato chunks, and then the rest of it is kind of a soup base. So if you're not going to use the whole thing, you want to get both of those things in the pot. And I've got about 2 cups of water here. This is 4.5 cups for the entire package. I want it to be quite thick, so that I think is going to do it. And you might ask, how much was that? And I'm going to tell you it's just enough. So let's get that on the stove and we'll continue. Okay, while we're here, let's get our rice going. So this is rice 101. If you don't know how to make rice, pay attention and you will soon. I learned how to make rice from Poppy Tooker in New Orleans. If you ever go there, look her up. She's quite a character. So the first thing you need to cook rice properly is a rice pot. And that's what this thing is designed for. It's got a nice tight fitting lid. That's very important. If you were to try to cook rice in this type of pot, it wouldn't work because the steam is going to escape through this space, and we're actually steaming rice when we cook it this way. We're not boiling rice. So it's important to have a tight fitting lid. So I already brought this water to a boil. It's hot. This is how I do rice. Salt and pepper. Now if you're in an emergency situation and you don't have enough water, you might want to think about how much salt you're going to use, but I don't have that problem right now, so I'm going to use salt and pepper. Rice in. I'm going to use some Patriot Supply butter powder. It's good stuff. Okay, our rice is back up to a boil. Turn it down to a low simmer and put a lid on it. Set a timer for 20 minutes. That's it. Rice 101. Alright, continuing on, let's get our salmon ready. We're just going to chop this up. Nothing too fancy. You don't really have to get it very fine. It's going to continue to break down a little bit when you mix these up in the bowl. There we go. I think we're done with that knife. Chopped pecans. Delicious in a salmon croquette. Use what you have. If you had walnuts, you could use them. If you had almonds, you could use them. I don't think peanuts would be the right flavor profile, but pecans for me work best. Dill. which I happen to have, and dill and salmon is a no-brainer, so that's pretty easy. Salt and pepper. We need a binder, so that could be a lot of things. It could be breadcrumbs. You could dice up a couple slices of any kind of bread really and toast them up and put that in there. It could be crushed potato chips. It could be plain flour or wheat flour. But considering the season, I have some matzo, so I'm going to use some of that. And how much? Just enough. Water, and you put the green beans in it. I add salt and pepper. And I'm also going to add, I mixed up some butter powder and a little bit of water. Now, I like to do it this way. You can just sprinkle this stuff on top of the green beans after they're done. Potato, whichever way you prefer. And they say use half cup to a quarter cup green beans. That's one serving. So just like rice, 2 to 1. You might ask how much that is, and I'm going to tell you it's just enough. You don't really have to put these back on the heat. You just let them sit and they will rehydrate, and they are delicious. Okay, our rice is done. We got about 30 seconds left. So we're going to turn this up to high for the last 30 seconds. And that's just going to kind of cook off the residual moisture if there is any. That's not something they would do in New Orleans, but it's what they do in Japan, and really who knows more about rice than the Japanese. Okay, it's done, except it's not done. We'll leave that lid on for 10 minutes, let this rice rest, because it's still cooking. And if you take that lid off now, you're going to wreck your rice. Okay, moving on to the mac and cheese. This is 4.5 cups of water to a boil. And I already opened this up and took the O2 absorber out. So it's a pretty simple process. They say whisk it in. I don't know if they literally mean whisk it in, but I use a whisk to break up the lumps. Works pretty well. They're going to break up. You can see there's still lumps there. As this continues to cook, they're going to break up. This is going to get nice and creamy. Which you do need to stir it. I don't know. Come back to it every 5 minutes or so and check out. See what's going on. They say cook it for 20 minutes, stirring frequently, whatever that means. Okay, we're back to our salmon croquette. This is our thickened soup. It's quite thick. It's still actually pretty warm too. I did put it in the freezer for a few minutes just to cool it off because we don't want to cook our eggs at this stage of the game. So there we go. That's our glue, and we'll turn that into soup tomorrow. This potato soup is actually quite tasty. I like it a lot. I've eaten it 3 or 4 times now. It's really good. So we're going to mix this up. You just want to incorporate everything together. We don't want a chunk of potato soup. We still have 2 eggs to put in here, but I'm going to let it cool down a bit more before we do that. It doesn't matter if we warm up the salmon with the potato soup. We're getting ready to fry these up, so. Alright, back in a few. Okay, let's get this show on the road. The squeaks and the whistling you hear is a 1-year-old cockatiel named Maddie, and he's in his cage right now in the other room. He's not particularly happy about it, but he can be unpredictable, and he does fly, and I really would not want to see him fly into a pot of boiling water or something like that. So he's not allowed in here when I'm cooking. Alright, so we're going to let this, now that we have put some moisture on the matzo, we're going to let this stand a little bit and see where we get. I might add a little flour if necessary. It's not a bad texture right now. You don't want it, you don't want a smooth paste. You want them to be, to have some texture, and we don't want it too dry. That's actually pretty good, because we're going to put these in an egg wash and flour, dredge them in flour before we fry them. So let's let this sit for a little bit, see what we get, and we'll be back. Our mac and cheese is coming along. You know, I didn't even set a timer for this one, because you know when it's done, because it looks done. So we'll give that some more time. I had some butter powder left over, so I dumped that in there too, because really, why wouldn't you? Okay, we're back. We're getting ready to fry up these salmon croquettes, and then we'll be finished, because everything else is done. I'm going to cook them in a stainless steel pan. And here's the thing about stainless steel. So it can be as non-stick as any non-stick surface you can think of, but you have to do it right. If you put some oil in this pan and turn the flame on and drop anything in there, really, an egg, a piece of fish, a salmon croquette, it's going to stick. It's going to stick like mad, and there is nothing you will be able to do to unstick it. So what you have to do is you have to preheat this pan first, and it takes about 10 minutes. So if I were in a situation where I didn't have plenty of fuel, I probably wouldn't use this pan, although being the proud owner of a cockatiel, I cannot use Teflon or Teflon type products because if you get that pan too hot, it emits some sort of substance that kills birds. So there's that. I'm sure it doesn't kill people though. So I'm going to use stainless steel. I'm going to preheat this for about 10 minutes. I have about I'm almost too high on the preheat, and then I'm going to turn it down, because heating the pan this way changes the molecular structure of the steel itself, and that's what's going to make the pan non-stick. And I have some olive oil here, but I'm not going to put it in the pan until I'm ready to cook. So we'll be back. Okay, we're back. Our stainless steel pan is preheated. I'm going to add some olive oil. That is plenty hot. Plenty hot. So we have our salmon croquettes. And add them one at a time. Probably might just do 2 at a time. So, well, a couple things here. So I'm doing this live, right? So I'm taking a chance that if something goes wrong and it all sticks, you're going to know about it. Unless I edit it out and start over, but I won't do that. So that looks pretty good. It smells good. And I'm going to go ahead and cover this because I really don't want to clean my stove today. So what happens here when you properly preheat the pan is that when you put the oil in, the oil creates a barrier between the stainless steel and the food. Because the food has some moisture, as soon as it hits that hot oil, it's going to steam. And that steam kind of lifts it up off the bottom and it doesn't stick. You can see those are moving right now. If they did happen to stick, just leave them alone. Don't try to pry them up off the bottom. Let them cook. And if you give them a sufficient amount of time, they will release themselves. They'll form a crust on the bottom of the food, which is what we want. Because like Ann Burrell says, brown food tastes good. So we want a nice crust, and when they form that crust on the bottom, they will release themselves. They don't need your help. So let's give that a few minutes. We'll be back. Alright, I decided to switch to a screen here instead of a lid because I want that steam to be able to escape so that we end up with a nice crispy salmon croquette. So we'll be back. Alright, so I've flipped these over. They're nicely browned. The pan is a little hot, but a lot like pancakes, the last ones that you make in a batch are always better than the first ones, and that's kind of what it's like with these. I've turned the heat down. We'll get the temperature just right, and the last two, we'll cook them a little longer, but everything about this is almost fully cooked, and so it doesn't need a lot of time in the pan. Okay, first two are done. You can see how they've kind of puffed up and expanded. Partly that's the action of the matzo, because there really isn't any kind of leavening in this thing. Although you could, if you wanted to, add a little bit of flour with a little bit of baking powder if you wanted a kind of fluffier result. That works pretty well. So I'm going to get these out of the pan and move on to the next two. Okay, our next two croquettes are working. This was a kinder, gentler experience because this pan, the temperature is good now. It was kind of screaming hot for those first two. So we'll give these a few more minutes and we'll be back. Okay folks, dinner is served. We have Patriot Pantry freeze-dried green beans, Patriot Pantry mac and cheese. This tastes exactly like what you think it should taste like. You probably ate tons of it as a kid. That's what it is, and it's really good. Patriot Pantry long grain white rice, and a salmon croquette that we made from leftovers, and I did have mayonnaise and some dill pickle relish, so I mixed up a quick tartar sauce. So that is Sunday prepper dinner. Thank you for watching. I truly appreciate it. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. We'll see you next time.